Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Ask Andrew Show, Canada's first Facebook Live streaming family law question and answer show. My name is Jeffrey Hart, and I'm a senior associate with the Greater Toronto area-based Feldstein Family Law Group Professional Corporation. Both I and the entire firm practice exclusively in family law in the province of Ontario. Today, we'll be addressing how parents going through a separation can help protect their children from the difficulties associated with the separation process. Here to provide their decades of insight and expertise in the area of social work and child welfare are the co-founders of Rise Up Counseling, Helen Yack and Gabbi Silverberg. Welcome to the show, Helen and Gabbi.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
It's so nice to meet you. Okay, so I guess I'll get right to it. To start off, and whoever wants to jump in and take this one, to start off, what would you say are the most significant effects that a separation or divorce can have on children?
Okay, so I think it's really important to start off by saying that divorce does not have to be this really big traumatic experience. Children survive divorce. What they really struggle with is the conflict between their parents. And, when parents make the decision to separate or divorce, it's the kids that have to do most of the work. They have to do the adjustments. They're the ones that have to go back and forth from each home. They're the ones that have to make sure that, that they have the items that they need, in their backpack to have at each home. They're the ones that have to maybe change their social circle, and that their best friend is no longer living across the street from them. So it's really important to understand the impact that it has on children in terms of the adjustment that kids are being asked to make. The other piece that's really important is to understand that decisions get made for kids during this process. They are the ones, the parents are the ones telling kids whose home they need to be at, what time they need to be there at, how long they need to be there for. And so when children feel like they have no control over their lives, they search for control in other areas. So maybe it's the food that they eat, or maybe it's their ability to refuse or go to school, or the type of friends they have, or the interactions that they have with family. So children do seek control where they can, but just as a reminder, it doesn't have to be this big traumatic event and experience for families. Children can survive this as long as parents do their part in helping support them through the process.
Yeah, I've absolutely agree with you, and I've heard pretty much every judge I've ever been in front of say that nothing will adversely affect a child more profoundly than continuing adult conflict. And I had never actually, that's a great point you made about the kids doing most of the work. I hadn't thought about that before, but that's absolutely right. I mean, all the pressure and all the legwork, no pun intended, is on them. And yeah, that's amazing. Okay. So, question two, I'm gonna assume, Gabbi, you're gonna take this one. Are there any telltale signs that parents can look for in their kids to see if their separation has been affecting the children?
It's a great question, and I think we need to take a step back and recognize that we don't want to assume that it's the separation itself that may be causing some stress or affecting them. These children were probably living through significant conflict. They were, watching their parents not resolve fights well, maybe silent treatments. I mean, parents are children's mentors. So what they learn about relationships, they learn while they've been living in that house prior to the separation ever occurring. So they may be impacted by the conflict or the issues that were involved in that marriage prior to the separation occurring. So lots of parents are concerned about the impact of separation onto their child. And that just takes a matter of knowing your children. So communication is key, and recognizing, who your child is. Your child could have struggles in school, social issues, mental health, even if you don't get divorced. How you manage the separation, right, is really the most important part around ensuring that your children are emotionally healthy as possible. It actually can build some resiliency, some independence, there are some strengths that come out of the, going through a separation, because we recognize that marriages are going to break down. It doesn't always have to be a negative. We can look at it as these children are going to come and learn how to be in two healthy households where the parents can end up being their best selves, as opposed to in a marriage that broke down where people may not have been their best selves for whatever reason. So I think that's really an important piece that you need to take into consideration.
No, I hear you, and I hear the same thing from judges too, and I see the same thing in some of my files and some of my child protection files, especially. I don't know this for a fact, but I've been told that that I think it's Mandarin has the same word for crisis as they do for opportunity, and so you can do it the right way or you can do it the not so right way. I can't. For the child, I can't say that there's an objective right way or wrong way, but everything has to be tailored to the particular family, right? And to the particular child. And it's up to the parents who know their child or ought to know their child the best on what they can handle, how they can approach it and all that kind of stuff. And I see the ill effects of it handled badly every day. And so I can't begin to tell you how much I agree with what you just said. Just as a follow-up, though, if as a parent you see something that really concerns you, like the child has, I'm just throwing these out there. I haven't really thought about these examples, but I do sometimes in my cases see children regress. Like if they're past the sort of potty training stage and then they go back to bedwetting and stuff like that, or they they were before a happy-go-lucky kid and now they're kind of glum and depressed and morose and kind of withdrawn. And I don't mean those particular examples, but I mean, if you see something that concerns you as a parent, do you have any suggestions for the best ways to respond?
Yes, I think there are possibilities that those situations can happen. And it's really important to know your children well and to be able to address those issues as they come up. And the best way that parents can do it while they're separated is communication. Having strong communication, being able to manage those difficult situations or changes in behavior and paying attention to it. I've been divorced for 12 years, and my daughter went through an adolescence and a period of time through COVID, and we finally had to take a step back, and I pulled the troops together, ex-husband, step-parents and all, and we said, we need to manage this. So as a team, we made decisions. So children go through different stages and ages of stages and development of their life, and different things can happen during those times. But when you're separated, communication and managing them without blame, without judgment, without assuming that it's the other parent's fault, you have to know your children well. You have to listen and you have to pay attention and keep the doors open to allow your children that opportunity to have that relationship with you, to share with you some of the struggles they're having. And for the younger kids, utilize people around you that you can help you. You've got doctors, you've got teachers. And the one final thing I want to mention is that when you are becoming a single parent or changing in your parenting style or blended family, sometimes you need to think about your parenting techniques. How do you tweak them? How do you adjust them accordingly to meet your child's needs? And think that, we all have an opportunity to do that as we grow and learn and as our children grow.
I'm starting to sound like a broken record here, but I couldn't agree more. Okay, so I know it's such a complicated and nuanced area, and it's never easy. Even when the parents are behaving like adults, it's still never easy because it's a paradigm shift in how the dynamics are going to work between the two separate households now as opposed to the one. Okay, so moving on to question 3. It's a nice question, a nice segue to this question. How can parents proactively insulate their kids from these harmful effects that sometimes flow from the breakdown of the marriage?
Yeah, and
Helen, is that Helen?
Yeah, no, I'll take this one. I think it's really important for parents to take a look at what they're doing. And I'll start off by talking around the partner brain versus the parent brain. And Parents need to understand what part of their brain they're bringing to the table. The partner brain is the part that often talks, that thinks about the ex-partner and all the bad things that happened in your marriage and all the reasons, why the marriage broke down and all the ways that you're judging, their parenting styles. That's the partner brain. The parent brain is the part that says, you know what? I'm going to put this part aside because I believe that children are it's an asset to have both of their parents in their lives, regardless of what the parenting time schedule says. But, as a parent, I believe that I'm going to foster and support the relationship of both parents. And so when parents can start to separate the two parts of their brains and what they're bringing to the table, that's how they start shielding their children. Being able to emotionally regulate what it is that they're feeling. Divorces and separations are emotionally charging, right? Like there's a lot of emotions that you're bringing to the table. But if you can't separate what you're thinking and what you're feeling to your child, it will be very hard for them to manage those emotions when you can't even manage your own. One of the things that we often see are children being caught in the middle. You tell this parent this, or you tell that parent this. And so the kids are running back and forth like ping pongs, like giving messages back from parent A to parent B. It is confusing. And the last thing children want to do is relay messages from one parent to the next because they're tired. They're tired of the conflict. They're tired of being your messenger. And so what they start doing is they start finding ways to align and to minimize the conflict. And so what do? They tell parent A, one thing, not necessarily because they're lying or they're making up stories, but because they think, how can I possibly minimize this conflict without, getting into it deeper and deeper. So if you can start removing your child from any type of messages, that is a brilliant way of just removing it. And the last thing I want to say is language and body language is important. When parents are walking around telling people it's my time, you're 5 minutes late, you owe me 5 times. Kids are not properties. And children don't care about 5 minutes and 7 minutes in traffic. What they care about is where are they going to be? What are they going to do? What's the time they're going to spend with the parent? That is what they care about. And this 5 minute, 7 minute conversation of what you owe me is detrimental. Body language. What you don't say is just as important as what you do say. We have lots of clients that say to us, we don't argue. We don't even see each other. We don't talk. We don't make any eye contact. The child's property goes on the driveway and then I come get it. Well, let me tell you, your kids are watching. They're watching what you're not saying. They're watching what you're saying, but they're specifically watching what you're not saying. So just because there isn't an argument, it doesn't mean that the high conflict isn't presenting itself. When you are putting your child's stuff, their backpack, onto the dirty driveway because it is not worthy enough to be put into the home, what message are you telling the child? You are telling them that their stuff is not important and their property is insignificant. So all of these things, matter. Say hello, make eye contact. I'm not talking about a sit down, Thanksgiving dinner. Say hello. That will go a long, long way.
Absolutely. And I mean, you said a couple things there that really hit home for me. Time with both parents is absolutely it's the bedrock of family law. I mean, it's a very rare situation where a judge will say, no, I think the child's better off without any contact with whichever. I'm going to say 1 in 30 or 40 files is something like that. The lack of self-awareness from the parents. Oh, I see that so often. And they tend to project their behavior on the other parent too. I mean, and I see a lot of, I don't know if it's just my practice, but I see a lot of narcissism there. I see a lot of, I'm the, every story of one of the parents is I'm either the hero in that story or the victim in that story, as opposed to seeing that the children are the real victims who didn't ask for any of this and modify your behavior as a result. And like you said, you don't have to be, lovey-dovey, just be civil. Civil. That's all you need. That's all the children need to see, is that your parents aren't at each other's throats all the time. It's so terrible. As a follow-up, Sorry. Yes, as a follow-up, how do parents figure out the balance between telling the truth? Let's say, in a situation where I mean, you can answer it however you like, but that's the example that immediately came to my mind. How do parents figure out the balance between telling the truth to their kids versus shielding them from the whole process, the separation process?
So it's a great question because truth is based on perspective. Whose truth is what is my truth is very different likely than what is your truth. So when we talk about telling the quote unquote truth to our children, it's really important that we're understanding that it's only perspective. And just because you have a feeling doesn't make it a fact. Feelings are not facts. It is something that you are entitled to have, but it doesn't make it quote unquote true. So before sharing the truth with your children, it's really important, as Gabbi mentioned before, around the ages and stages around children and their development. How much do children need to know? And before you share this truth, I would encourage you to ask yourself, what is the benefit of my child knowing this information? Do they need to know the intricate details of mortgage rates and how much money each parent makes and why they're moving to a certain home? Or do they need to know that they're moving and this is where we're going to be living and this is what it's going to look like? Do they need to know that parent A had an affair and that's the reason why, the relationship has broken down? Or do they need to know that relationships are complicated and marriages are complicated? And sometimes due to those complications, dynamics in marriages shift. Do they need Parents often feel, as you said before, Jeff, it's like there is a win and lose mentality, right? Like if it's all or nothing, if I share it all, then I'm going to win here. And if I need to walk out looking well. The one sort of metaphor I want to would like people to walk away with is I want you to imagine your child walking around with a backpack. And every time they get a piece of information, it's a rock in their backpack. So how much money do parents make? Rock in their backpack. How terrible is, parent A? Rock in their backpack. How much, conflict is parent B causing because of this? Rock in their backpack. And as these rocks get thrown in, the backpack gets heavier and heavier and heavier. And then the child eventually falls and has a very, very difficult time getting up. So I encourage parents to really think about what are the rocks that they're throwing in their backpack, and can we start removing them so that children can walk tall and proud and not feel so heavy every single day because of information their parents are sharing with them.
Again, I see the effects of this kind of, I call it information sharing, burdening the children with things they don't need to know, causing the children to have to grow up a lot faster than they otherwise would. And I've told clients this, I've told judges this, that kind of situation that you describe where the children are placed, in the middle and have to hear all the terrible stuff that both sides think of the other side. They didn't ask for it, and it robs them of their childhood, and it's abusive. I personally think it's abusive to burden a child with this information that they can't do anything about. All they can do is worry. It just causes them to worry. Why would you ever want to do that to your child? Anyway, I completely hear what you're saying. Okay, so question 4. Separations are often a very difficult time for the parents themselves, of course, potentially limiting their time, attention, and emotional stamina. What is your advice for parents who are struggling with balancing their own emotional needs with those of their children?
So it's a great question, and it's a lot of the work that we do in our private practice is people come to us because they're struggling with managing their emotions, whether it's 3 years down the line and an email is still creating anxiety, whether they don't know what to do with the extra time, and they don't realize that some of their own behaviors and language may be contributing to the ongoing conflict. As without that intention, like the impact is so hard on the kids. So we think about like how they can start to learn to tweak and realize that the quality that they have with their children matters also over sometimes of the quantity. right? How relationships can look different. They are literally setting the stage of how they are going to have relationships with their children in the future right now, right? And when they're so focused on the conflict or what they don't get or what's not fair or what's not even, then they're going to miss out on the being able to have that quality time. A lot of the questions we get is, what do I do with all my extra time? What do I do when my kids are not with me? Well, there's lots you can do, right? There's ways you can take care of yourself. You could see your friends. You can take a weekend away. You can sit and learn how to be uncomfortable in the silence that will one day you will actually really love. Because when the kids grow and they leave your house, you will have quiet time and you're going to have to learn how to manage that. So we actually talk about perspective. And the fact is that if you are managing a conflict or a divorce, if your children are, let's say, 5, 6, or 7, by the time they're 16, 17, that age of adolescence is where they learn how to have that independence. And they start to remove yourselves from you already naturally. And they're looking for you in a way of being able to listen and guide them. And if all you've done has ever been focused on the conflict or what's not fair, or you missed out on the quality time with your children, then what kind of relationship are you actually building with your children? So understanding that perspective is important. Being accountable for your own emotions, being accountable for your own behavior. Right? We're not looking to win. And so we want to be able to guide parents in being able to develop those healthy coping mechanisms for the change in their circumstances. I think that's just one of the few many ways that people can start to think about how to manage themselves during this time.
What are some of the resources that parents can use when they're feeling overwhelmed in the situation that you're describing?
So there's plenty of resources out there, especially in the time of technology. There's a number of great podcasts people can listen to and gain information. There's therapeutic support in terms of what we offer. We're also, we're starting some people are looking, we also have a Facebook support group where people have conversations and ask questions. We're also starting an online virtual support skills group. So people that can learn skills around emotional regulation, around communication styles, like understanding Bill Eddy's BIF, being brief, informative, friendly, and firm. And the way that you're going to communicate, it actually works. And we teach people to implement that style so we can try to decrease some of the conflict. We encourage people to have the self-care and be working towards living their best life and figuring out how to close a particular chapter in their life while they're learning to rebuild and write the new one. And we want to be able to encourage people to recognize that there's lots of different supports out there and surround yourselves with the right people. There's families and friends who want to help. You're not alone. People feel they're alone. They feel isolated because of their circumstances. But change is hard, change is difficult, but people they survive divorce.
It is possible. I do see it. It's not all doom and gloom. I shouldn't make it sound like it's all doom and gloom. But okay, we'll move on to question 5. What should a parent do if their partner isn't cooperating with them in respect of insulating their children from conflict? Helen.
Well, parents not cooperating.
I know, it's shocking. I know.
It's shocking. Listen, at the end of the day, you are not going to be able to control or have any type of say of what goes on in the other home. And so it's really about being able to understand what is in your control and what is out of your control. There may be a lot of things out of your control. You cannot you can't tell the other parent what to say or what not to say or what to do or what not to do. But there's certainly things that you can do when it's your parenting time. Having an understanding of boundaries. I want to say something really important about boundaries. Boundaries are not agreements. People do not have to agree to your boundary. A boundary is something that you implement because it works for you. And often people don't agree to your boundaries because the boundary is set onto them. So of course they're not going to like it. So it's up to you to adhere to your boundary and make sure that, that you are following through on what it is that you have set. You cannot fix situations. And so often what happens is that clients will say, my child has come home. They're so upset because the other parent, talked to them about how bad I am, or, that I'm the cause of all of this conflict, and on and on and on. And so often parents want to go right into fix mode, and they want to call the other parent and they want to tell them, why are you saying this stuff? This is terrible. What are you doing? And instead, we encourage people to just empathize. Empathize with your child around how hard this is, how confusing this is. It must be really hard to hear your other parent talk really bad about your other parent, or about me. I'm so sorry that you're experiencing this. You can't fix it. What kids tell us is that my parents don't understand what I'm going through. And so we encourage parents to really take a lead in not fixing it, but empathizing. Let them have a safe place where they can have this conversation and just talk about it without feeling like they're being judged, or that it's harsh, or that you're trying to fix it for them.
Yeah, I mean, back to, I'm not sure which of you now had said it, but communication is key, right? I mean, to show, not just to show the child that you care, but to, like, well, communicate that care to them. I tell my clients, in situations like that, pick your battles, right? Not everything. That's not necessary, like that they didn't I can't even think of a ridiculously tiny, petty example at the moment, but I mean, pick your battles. Not everything has to be World War III, right? Because if everything becomes a fight, then there's no victory, unless it's Pyrrhic. So anyway, I always tell my clients, they don't always listen because it's difficult emotionally for them, but take the high road as well. And I'm glad that you said what you said, Ellen, because I always tell them, it's never a bad idea to be understanding and kind. Sometimes it's impossible or very, very difficult for the parents to do it, given all the hurt that is dredged up every time they see the other party, or maybe the separation is so fresh that they haven't even really accepted it on a certain level yet. But anyway, I'm glad that what I've been telling my people is the same as, it basically lines up with your advice. So I'm glad that I've been telling them the right things.
I just want to add one other thing, sorry, really quickly. We talk about co-parenting, and it's sort of this ideal way of managing, divorce and separation. Not everybody can co-parent. And I think that's okay. Sometimes we have to look at something that's called like parallel parenting. I stay in my lane, you stay in your lane. Hopefully we can try to respect one another when we do that. But it's not a demeaning way just because you can't co-parent. And the one thing I want to say around just sort of this conflict, when you're really struggling with someone in co-parenting, treat it like a business relationship. If you were upset with your boss at work, would you send a really heated email around how terrible of a person they are and what a terrible, job they've done at managing the company? No, you would keep it very professional, and you would highlight the specific things that you're trying to change. So if you need to, keep the exchange with your co-parent as a business exchange. Do you need to schedule weekly meetings? Do you need to schedule your email? Do you have to talk about all the things that were terrible in your marriage? Or can you just focus on what it is that you're trying to get out of this exchange, or what the attention is? And so when you're able to enter in that frame of mind, would I act like this with my boss? Chances are no. We really we encourage you to sort of take the same type of high road and do it with your co-parent.
And as we're talking about children, I want to add one very important caveat, and that is that we know and we hear from children, adult children of divorce, the biggest impact is the conflict. They don't want any part of it. They don't want to see it. They don't want to hear it. They don't want any part of it. So if you could take one piece of advice away from our conversation today is do your part as a parent, resolve it so you can have a better relationship with the children that you decided to bring into this world.
I couldn't have said it any better myself, Gabby. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you ladies today. Unfortunately, we got to wrap it up. But I personally will be reaching out to you both because I have a feeling I'm going to need your services. My clients will need your services. So, but thank you so much. I was expecting some wisdom, but I didn't expect it was like trying to take a sip from a fire hose today. You guys were fantastic. So thank you so much. And I'd be happy to guest host again should Andrew ever fall ill. And if the guests are of such a high quality as today. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And the next Ask Andrew show will be on February the 14th at 12 p.m. If you have any requests or ideas for future shows, please email them to us at info@feldsteinfamilylaw.com. Thank you for watching.